Welcome to my kitchen. I am Bee from Thermitucker, and I hope today's session will teach you a little something new. I am learning something new today as I haven't made this recipe from cookidoo.com.au, and it's called chicken Jalfrezi. Now if I pronounce it incorrectly, I'm sorry, but I don't know about you, but my family absolutely love chicken. And if I can find something that has a little bit of a tweak, something different, and maybe even a little story behind it, that's what I love to be able to recreate. So this little recipe today is going to be something that I haven't tried before, and I will share with you a couple of tips that I'm going to use to change the recipe just very slightly. And that is because I love to make sure that I make enough for the family that I have. I have young men in my family that eat a lot of food. So yeah, let's get started and I'll show you exactly what I've done. So chicken gel, let me get that right, Jalfrezi. The first step that we're going to do is prepare the chicken. So I have done this portion ahead of time because there is a marination that needs to take place, and I'll walk you through the process. It does say to place a bowl on top of your machine, and what you're going to do, make sure that you remove your measuring cup because you don't want that to be in its place. What you need to do is weigh in 450 grams of your chicken breast that's been cut up into roughly 3 centimeter pieces. So what I've gone ahead and done is added in 800 because I have to, or 900. I have to cater for bigger tummies. And also if there's leftover, wonderful for the next day. So what I've gone ahead and done is follow the next step, which is adding in 1 teaspoon. And remember, you're going to have to double it. So 1 teaspoon if you're going to be doing the recipe according to me. It's actually 2 teaspoons, my apologies. So 2 teaspoons of your coriander, ground coriander, 2 teaspoons of your cumin, ground cumin, and 2 teaspoons of your turmeric. Remember, if you've doubled it, it will then become 4 teaspoons. So what you want to do then is make sure you stir that up, put those spices all over that chicken and set that aside. You can absolutely do that the night before, and that means that those flavors will permeate through that chicken and give you a much deeper flavor. So you can absolutely do that. I haven't. I've gone ahead and done that about half an hour ago. So that's the first portion. Then the second portion I'm going to show you. The third step I'll then just talk through so that you can see exactly what needs to get going with the recipe. But let's just start off. This is the portion of the recipe where we're going to make the tomato sauce. So it is very simple. It is a curried tomato sauce. So I'm just going to talk you through this process. The first thing that we're going to do is add in 20 grams of vegetable oil. If you don't have vegetable oil, I'm using some coconut oil. You can use coconut oil, or you can even use olive oil. But remember, it'll go to a higher heat, so just bear that in mind. Now, the next part is to add in 50 grams worth of quartered onions. I'm just going to get my ingredients. All I did was just have an onion and chop it into quarters, remove the outer casing, and I'm going to add that in, as well as it calls for 2 garlic cloves, and I've added some extra. So if you love your garlic, add some extra. If you don't like garlic, just remove that altogether. And then the next ingredient was a fresh green chili. I always have a stash of red chilies from my bush that I just take out a couple of the seeds from and then freeze those. So I just pull that out of the freezer as I need it. Then what you want to do, the next portion, is to chop this for 5 seconds, speed number 5. I'm and then the next part of the recipe says just scrape that down and make sure you put your simmering basket on top, because we're going to then cook this for 5 minutes. So I'll just show you what this looks like. All right, I'm not going to put my face over that because I don't want to get any onion in my eyes. All right, so now that will cook for 5 minutes on 120 degrees Celsius on the stir speed. I'm just going to lift this off because I don't have my simmering basket. It has got something else in it at the moment. So I'm just making sure that that lifts off. And then what I'm going to explain, my little tweak, because I have added in the extra chicken, so I've doubled the amount of chicken. What I am going to do, if you want to, you can double the onions, double the chili in that step beforehand, because what I'm doing is the next part of the recipe is to add in the tomatoes, tin tomatoes, 400 grams. So I'm going to be adding in 2 of those so that there is a lot more sauce for the chicken to cook in. This is a personal preference, up to you. If you want to do that, you absolutely can. Just bear in mind that when you add extra protein into a recipe, you definitely will have to bump up the time by a couple of minutes. What I usually would do is cook the time that the recipe requests, and then what I will do is have a look at the chicken that's at the top layer of your batch. Just see if you touch it and you can feel there is resistance, then definitely just, in other words, it's hard. That means it's ready. If not, and you can feel the chicken is soft, that means that you have to then, I would stir the bowl so that the one that's not cooked at the top will actually go towards the bottom, and then add in most probably between 2 to 5 minutes, depending on how much chicken you have added. I know that it sounds like a bit of a guessing game, but you have to be careful when it comes to chicken. You don't want to get any salmonella, and you want to make sure, or E. coli, you want to make sure that it's cooked 100%. So rather err on the side of caution and just cook it a little bit extra. But this is a little tip for you. For those of you that haven't used a Thermomix before, that's why I'm giving you a rough time, so that you can experiment with that and have a play. For those of you that have had your machine for a while and you're used to manual cooking, you will understand exactly what I'm talking about and not worry about specific time. You'll look at the texture of your chicken. So, all right, there is another little another ingredient I am going to add into it. For those of you that have followed me for a while, whenever I use tomato, I always add in, for each tin of tomato, I use 1 teaspoon of sugar. So I use raw sugar in my household, preferably organic, so that it doesn't have any nasties in it. Most of my ingredients are organic as well, whatever I can source. So that goes in. I usually do that because sometimes I do forget to add the sugar, and in my family they prefer not to have acidic food. So this is why I add in the sugar. It just helps with that acidity of the tomatoes. So I usually will add that at the top of the tin so that I will remember, but that's that portion of it. So I'm just going to explain then, it's nearly finished. The tomato, we're also going to add in some water, but I'm not going to double the water. I'm only going to double the tomato. So it calls for 250 grams, which is a cup worth. And then that has to have obviously some spices which are echoed in what the marinade is. So as I said before, your lovely coriander, ground coriander, your ground cumin, and then also your ground turmeric. This is optional for you to double. If you don't want to have it too spicy, when I say spicy, I'm not talking about heat, but the flavor spice, you just keep it to what the original recipe is. But if you want to double it, then it does say 1 teaspoon, so you will double that to 2 teaspoons. And then it does also say to add in some fine sea salt, a teaspoon worth. But like I say, those of you that know me, whenever there is an element, or I should say a step in the recipe calling for salt, but the mixture is a wet base, I always revert back to utilizing my stock paste. And this is my veggie stock paste, because that gives a little bit of extra veggies and absolutely much better flavor than your normal salt. So that's just a little tip for you guys. I'm just going to remove this. All right, here goes those 2 cans worth. And the 1 cup of water, I just want to get that. So 250. Okay, I have added a little bit extra, not too much. So 350, an extra 100. But like I say, not the whole lot. I don't want it to be too saucy. So I'm going to add in a very big heaped teaspoon of the coriander. The next is a heaped teaspoon of the cumin. And then you can tell we love our spice. A heaped teaspoon of the turmeric. Add that in. And then the salt is, it says a teaspoon, but remember I'm going to double the salt content because my family loves salt. So I'm going to use a tablespoon worth and some. So if you don't want to use as much salt, that's totally up to you. You can adjust that according to your taste. So the next thing to do is to add our lid onto that, and then just blend that for 30 seconds on speed blend. It says scrape down the sides, but I'm not going to bother with that. This is the cooked portion of your tomato sauce. This will reduce it. This is a cook time of 15 minutes and then 98 degrees Celsius and 0.5 is the speed. So it will reduce slightly. I know it says add the simmering basket. As I said, I'm just making sure that there's space for it to escape at the top. But I'm going to run through the next portion, which is the curry portion. If you look at the recipe, it will then say to remove the sauce, the tomato sauce, out of that, and just make sure that you rinse out your bowl, because we're going to be making use of our heat function to cook off the next ingredients. So it is actually 20 grams worth of vegetable oil. As I said before, you can use your coconut oil or your olive oil or whatever oil you have. So 20 grams worth of that. And then you're going to add in 120 grams worth of onions that have been quartered. So what will happen is when it's cut like this, it will fall apart as it's cooking. So make sure that it is cut into quarters instead of halves, because I know usually I'm lazy and I'll just leave it at half. So that will shred it. If you don't want to do that and you want to just cook the whole pieces, you can eliminate the next step, which is to process it for 2 seconds. So that will chop it, and then adding in your red capsicum. It does say to cut that for 2 or 3 centimeters. So you'll add that into your onions, and then 2 fresh chilies. As I said, that's where the little frozen ones come in handy. That will remain solid. Those won't be chopped up. So if you don't like too much heat, you can leave that out, and then just warn your family that they know that there's chili inside the recipe. So, all right, put your simmering basket on top of that. That will then be cooked for 10 minutes on 100 degrees Celsius on reverse speed, and then add in, after that has been completed, you're going to add in your marinated chicken. So that is a brilliant thing, because now obviously we're going to start the cook time for the chicken, and that will be also needing to be included is our cooked reserved tomato sauce. So putting everything back into your bowl once the onions and the peppers are cooked, and then what you'll do is place your basket on top, your simmering basket, and that will need to be cooked. As I said, the initial time that's on the recipe, if you're following it straight, it just says 15 minutes, 100 degrees Celsius, and that's reverse speed. And then if you are cooking extra, add the time accordingly. And then what you're gonna do once you're happy with your chicken, you're going to stir in this little magic ingredient. It's called garam masala. You can actually make your own from a Cookidoo recipe. Have a look on cookidoo.com.au, but 1 teaspoon or 2 of this, and then also some lovely fresh coriander, and sprinkle that over your curry, because your curry will be ready. Please feel free to serve that with some pilau rice, or just your plain jasmine or basmati rice, or perhaps a naan bread that you have made yourself, or if you don't have time, something from the shops. So yeah, that is today's recipe. I hope you have enjoyed it. If there are any questions that you have, please feel free to contact me, and I'll be happy to help you with your Thermomix. For those of you that are in Australia, yes, unfortunately, just letting you know, I do have some viewers from overseas. I'm not able to service any other country beside Australia, so but always happy to help and answer your questions if you have any regarding your Thermomix. So hope you have a great day, everybody, and I will see you again soon. Take care.